We're going to transition now to our next speaker. Yes, applaud, applaud. Our next speaker is Carl, who's going to speak to us about Caves of Vancouver Island.
Awesome, great. So this is a repeat of a 2019 presentation that I did for the Southern Arizona Grotto. And so it's about Vancouver Island off the coast of British Columbia, Canada, which is where I lived for about 10 years before I moved to Arizona. I'm going to talk about geography, geology, notable caves, and waxing nostalgic has been cut due to time. So the club there is the Vancouver Island Cave Exploration Group, which is a subgroup of the British Columbia Speleological Federation, the BCSF. I'll talk about geography. British Columbia is up there. That's Vancouver Island off the coast. BC is pretty big. It's bigger than, I think it's 1.5 times the size of California, significantly bigger than Arizona. But Vancouver Island off the coast is only about 10 times bigger or 10 times smaller than the state of Arizona. Here it is on a satellite. Vancouver Island is about 12,000 square miles, 10% the size of Arizona, has a population of about 800,000 people, most of which is in Victoria, which is the city in the way bottom right corner. And I don't think you guys can see my mouse. I don't even think I have a mouse in here. I don't know.
We see something flying around, but it's kind of hard to see.
So most of the population live in the corner way down at the end of the island, and the rest of the island is fjords and mountains, a lot of difficult to get to areas. Getting to the mainland is by ferry. I used to work on these ferries when I was in high school for a part-time job. There's whales, killer whales. The climate of the area is a temperate rainforest, so cave entrances tend to look like this. And often they're covered in bushes and blackberries and other things, and very dense vegetation. It's very wet. This is camped way up on top of a mountain in the alpine, but you're inside a cloud. Moss hanging off the trees. There's very large trees, not as big as in Northern California, but very big trees. This is a cedar tree. The whole area used to be covered in these giant cedar trees. They were logged, quite aggressively for understandable reasons. And so there's not much of the old giant cedar trees remaining, but there are in a few areas, and most of those areas are on Vancouver Island. The biggest one is that green one in the center at the bottom of the screen. That's where the West Coast Trail is, which is a famous hiking trail. One nice thing about the logging industry is they've made roads all over the island where nobody lives. So if it wasn't for the logging industry, none of this stuff would be accessible. And the clear cuts make nice places to camp. This is a coastal area. I think this is old growth forest actually. And that's a cave down there on the beach. There's a sea cave, which I can't point at, I guess, because my cursor is not visible. We do get snow. It's the least cold part of Canada, but we do get snow in the winter up there. And this is probably about as much snow as we would ever get. You don't get like 7 or 8 feet of snow like you would in Ontario. Caving in the snow is fun. Sometimes you have to dig out the entrances. They're buried under the snow. I'm going a little bit fast through these photos deliberately. This is an area, the same areas where that photo was taken earlier, but just on a different day when it wasn't misty. This is a Whiskey Jack. Geology. Here's a geological map of BC. The only thing I want to point at here is that the island at the bottom is obviously different color than the rest. The island is geologically distinct from the mainland. It's actually a piece of old seabed that has been pushed up to the surface. And so it's unlike the rest of the of British Columbia. It contains a lot of limestone. There's 1,500 plus caves on this small island, which is more than the rest of all of Canada combined. Most are quite small, but there are several larger systems, 10 kilometers plus in length. Obviously, limestone is the most common rock for the caves, but there are also marble caves and sandstone caves. Piece of limestone on the top left, sandstone cave on the top right. Typically, these are coastal. There's certain parts of the island where you can find a lot of small coastal caves made of sandstone. And then there's a few very small number of marble caves. And of course, marble is metamorphosed limestone. So you'll get sometimes marble in limestone areas. The caves are seasonally extremely wet with flowing snow runoff. They're about 40 degrees Fahrenheit all year around. Hypothermia is a major risk in the caves. If you get injured in the caves, it's common that hypothermia is the biggest risk because you will get hypothermia by the time rescue crew arrives. So even if you have a minor injury, you have to stay warm, or the hypothermia becomes more serious than the injury. The caves, because the caves are get so much water flow, they're often the main streamways are often pretty clean of mud, at least compared to Arizona from what I've seen so far. They're often, though, more poorly decorated than some of the most decorated Arizona caves I've seen. And I think that's because the caves in BC are a lot younger. This is how a lot of caving trips end in Vancouver Island with a sump. And then you go, well, we'll come back into drier season. And then you come back in a drier season, but it's freezing cold or it's full of snow or whatever. But you try to, the season has a big impact. It's climbing over a waterfall. So because it's cold, clothing, pretty much everyone wears an underlayer plus a fleece layer plus a caving suit. And in some occasions, a wetsuit. So always multiple layers, always full caving suits like this, which are, kind of optional in Arizona because it's nice and warm. Caving suits are, again, they get muddy, you hang them up and then they become stiff as a board like this. Okay, let's have some actual cave photos. So these are the caving areas that I personally have been to. There are more, but these are the ones I'm familiar with. The closest ones, as you can see, are right next to Victoria in the bottom right. And the second largest city of Nanaimo, a little bit up the coast there. So some caves are pretty easy to get to, but most of the bigger ones are way up island, as we say. And it can be a 7-hour drive from Victoria up to those ones in the center of the island there, or a 10-hour drive all the way up to the tip of the island. There's no big wide interstate. The highways are twisty and you can't go very fast. So Horn Lake is one of the areas near Nanaimo. It's right here. This is one of the, this must be Riverbend. Yeah, this is Riverbend. This is the only cave on the island that has commercial tours going, or any kind of tours for that matter, public tours. So it's often the first place we would take new people, at least in the club that I was with. This one we'd use a chain ladder, or a cable ladder, I should say. It's gated. It's one of the few on the island that's well known enough that they needed to gate it. There's actually several gates, but most of the caves are not gated. They're just very strict. Cascade Cave, aka Hobbit Hole, is another gated cave. It's right there. It's in that circle somewhere. This is a map. This one has a gate horizontal in the ground, kind of like that photo Blaze showed of that cave entrance. I don't know what cave that was, Blaze, but this is a similar deal. Entrance like this, and then a ladder climb down. Somebody's old shovel in the cave. I don't remember where this was, and I don't think it has a name. But we found this out in the rainforest somewhere. It's kind of like a quasi metamorphosed limestone that's halfway to Marble or something. Anyway, you can see a person there on the far side. It's a huge place where a river just goes in one side of a hill and comes out the other side. Skypot is a fun one. It's way up north there. It has a big impressive, on the elevation plot at the bottom, you can see a big vertical entrance right in the middle of the screen, and then a bunch of passages going horizontally. It can be done as a through trip, and we would often come down, I did this a couple times, we'd come down the big plot there, and then and then we'd come out a different entrance and retrieve the rope later from the surface. So there's the entrance. There's some snow at the bottom. I think there's snow at the bottom of this way into summertime because it doesn't get much light down there. And at the bottom of that, you go down a series of drops into a big room, a bunch of stalactites, a bunch of stalagmites. And I think this is one of the other entrances that you can come out of. You do it as a through trip. Glory Hole. Glory Hole has the biggest entrance on the island. It's way up there in the top left. It's a big sinkhole and then something like 7 other small rappels, and then it sumps out in an underground lake. So it's not a through trip, and it's quite a mission to get to the bottom of it with all those drops. But the entrance is this huge sinkhole. And then inside there is some Vados passage, and then a big room inside with a ceiling like higher than this. But this is still the entrance. The Gordon River area is an area down at the south end of the island near the cities. It's another good place to take beginners. It's within a weekend's distance. You can do a bunch of stuff. The sinkholes are always full of logs. Like we went out one time and we were trying to follow some directions that we'd heard. Somebody said, oh, you know, go to the end of the road and then it's the 3rd sinkhole on the right after the big tree or something. And we go out there and there's nothing but sinkholes for like a mile in every direction and big trees in all of them. So that wasn't helpful directions. But yeah, lots of sinkholes everywhere. And some of them have stuff at the bottom. They're always clogged with debris. We went this one, you know, here, it's clogged with wood, logs and rocks. But you can get through there. Another sinkhole. A hazard with this is the ground is often very soft and your rope can cut right into it and then shower you with dirt when you're on rope. A big pile of limestone boulders. I think there is actually a cave under this. Well, it's not really a cave, but it's a, you know, there's a space in this rock pile and you can get into it. That moss growing on that pattern in the cracks of the limestone is very common. Here's another sinkhole entrance. This one has lots of water in it. That's that sump photo I showed earlier. Or it's not really a sump, but the passage goes down into a low spot, and you can see there's passage on the other side. Sinkholes sometimes will eat roads, so this is not very uncommon. We were using a road for a long time, and then you come back one year, and it's a sinkhole swallowed road. The road started to go. I don't think this is not connected to a cave. This is just the road eroding, but it shows the the water and the amount of seasonal change that comes from the water. There it is. Stream cave. This was a cave where there's a challenge everybody would do to get through the whole cave without getting wet, and it's very difficult. It has a low ceiling, and you have to bridge over the water. There's a low ceiling, and you have to bridge over the water and sort of get on all fours, and there's water beneath you, and you're trying to stay off of it. Vehicles. So you can, there's snow, so 4-wheel drive is good and good tires. It's hard to do anything in the winter with the snow. Sometimes quads or ATVs are good in the wintertime. My friend sometimes is able to get this thing way up to remote places, but that's because he beats the heck out of it. And I think one year he actually broke his oil pan off on this one road. So not recommended. This is what I had when I lived in Vancouver Island. It's a Mitsubishi camper van. It's called a Mitsubishi Delica. This took me anywhere I wanted to go. It's a 4-wheel drive turbo diesel, and it has you can sleep 4 people in it. The roof lifts up. This is a marble cave. I've only seen 2 marble caves on the island. This is one of them. So at one end of the cave, it's limestone, but as you go through it, it transitions into marble. I think it's neat the way it erodes a little bit similarly to limestone, but a little bit different. Bugs. Lots of spiders in the caves, and especially seasonally, they go in there. I think they go in there to hibernate in the winter. So whenever you're calling into a cave if it has a crawl entrance in the winter, these things are always hanging out by the entrances. And you get these crickets too, same as in Arizona. And there's no rattlesnakes, which is great. No rattlesnakes to worry about. Thanksgiving Cave. This was for the club I was in. This was our annual Thanksgiving long weekend trip. It's way up there. It's one of the biggest ones on the island, one of the big systems. This map is, you probably can't see any detail on it without zooming in more, but there's a cabin up there. This is what it looks like in the wintertime. And sometimes we snowshoe in. Well, this time we snowshoed in. You can see the snowshoes. It's got propane stove and oven and everything, and it's got a water Pelton wheel that runs it. This was a couple of years ago. They were building a new cabin. I don't know what status it's in now, but the hope is to build a new one. The old one's starting to get crushed by the snow. We're going to skip through these a bit quickly. This is a piece of old logging equipment out in the forest. There's a cave entrance, underground in Thanksgiving Cave. Really big pit. This is very deep. I don't have a photo looking down it because it didn't work out, but big pit in the cave. There's nothing at the bottom. People have wrapped down. There's nothing down there.
Carl, 2-minute warning.
Thank you. Thanksgiving dinner. That's the boundary. In the distance, you can see suddenly the trees get taller. This is the boundary between the new wood, the trees that have been planted for logging, and the original trees, the old growth trees, which here are like twice as tall. And you can see the whole, at one point, the whole island was like that, those tall trees spaced widely apart. Black tea. I'm going to skip through this quickly, except for a couple of good ones. Wormhole Cave. This is a neat through trip, starting with a series way up there, starting with a series of nice views, nice hike approach, mountains, blah, blah, blah. Okay, starts with a 45-degree downward tube, some nice rappels, and this. This is a bear skeleton from, nobody knows exactly how old it is because the attempt to date it, the researcher wanted to take out the skull and the caver said no, and then it became secret and not allowed to be studied, but it's a bear of some sort that's down in the cave. Anyway, there's also lots of mines and canyons, which we'll have to wait for another time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Carl. Let's go ahead and take just one question. We had a couple in the chat asking about deepest, longest caves and extent. So I'm wondering if you could just address that, and then we'll head on to our next speaker.
Sure. I think longest in total passage is around 13 kilometers, and deepest is around 300 meters.